Welcome to the Appalachian Dim Sum, second course, episode 4.
Or part 2, I guess.
Yeah, part 2.
And this will be our main course, correct?
Main course is going to be The Walking Dead. I've got a couple of things I want to say about it, but first we're going to talk about our actual main course, the food. All right, so like I said before, I'm getting into the spirit of Appalachian Dim Sum, combining East meets South meets West. Yeah, South meets West. There you go. Yeah. I like that. Combine the South meets West kind of food. I made bao. First time I've ever made bao. I usually just buy it, but I've made barbecue bao. So BaoBQ.
What is bao again?
Bao is like a steamed pork bun.
Oh yeah, okay.
So it's pork barbecue bao.
Okay.
And I put some cheese on top, some cheddar.
So we actually have some dumpling.
Yeah, actual dumplings.
Actual dim sum.
Yeah, actual dim sum. Actually having actual dim sum. Yeah. But I was trying to, when I was making it, I was thinking more like Southern flavor.
Yeah.
So I don't think I used any like sesame oil or anything like that on this. Wait, no, I brushed it with sesame oil.
Gotcha.
So you'll get something.
I think we talked about this earlier at one point, that I don't have any local hunting meat that we can source for that, because generally that kind of meat's not very fatty. I don't like to let it be in a freezer too long, so we try to use it up and go through it. I did peek the other day. I do not have any more venison or any deer meat there. I need to do some research and see if it's safe to eat squirrels this time of year. I'm not sure if you should do that when it's not in the cold weather with parasites and things like that.
Oh, yeah, let's stay away from those.
It might be fine, I'm not sure, but that would be the only thing I could source right now, because they are all over the place here and pretty annoying and destructive. And I would take some joy in eating a few of them just to get them out of my attic. So maybe we'll have some squirrel dim sum in the future.
At some point, but for now we're just gonna do barbecue dim sum.
If you wait till the fall, I can get some deer meat.
We'll try it again then.
Yeah.
But we're gonna go eat that, and we'll be back to talk about The Walking Dead.
Okay.
All right. Well, welcome back from eating our main course. What did you think of the barbecue?
That was amazing.
Yeah, I was happy with it.
Yeah, it turned out really good.
Yeah.
The way that you get the steamed pork bones in like Chinatowns and places like that, where it is really doughy, you've got that little savory barbecue in the meat. It was very similar to that. It wasn't the same kind of dough, but it was. Were they baked?
No, well, kind of. What I did was I steamed them.
Okay.
And then I put cheese on top, because for some reason I just wanted cheese on top of them, because I like cheese on my pork barbecue.
Yeah.
So I put cheese on top and I threw them in the broiler. So
okay,
it was steamed but like finished off in the oven.
That's the only difference I was thinking, is like steamed pork buns, when you have those, you get the authentic thing. They're really sticky.
Right. This was more of a.
This is almost like a pot sticker, but not cooked that as brown as those usually are.
Yeah.
So, but still really good. Then we also we threw in one of the Chinatown snacks. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Maybe bacon, or is it maybe pork belly?
I mean, it looks like bacon.
It's
Oh, hang on a sec.
a Lay's product.
Where'd you get it?
That was at the, there's a little store that has a bunch of snacks right as you go into Chinatown in Chicago. It's right next to the hotel we always stay at. And every time we've been there, we always pick stuff up. And they have multiple flavors of chips, and they've got multiple. We've got some for dessert later. They always have the different flavors of Kit Kats and things like that, and even different cookies and things that are typically American products like Oreos and Lay's, but always these kind of oddball flavors, and probably not terribly good for you, but they were good tasting.
Well, honestly, they're probably better for you than if it was an American product.
Well, yeah, it probably doesn't have all the garbage that gets into ours.
It looks like it does require them to put all the ingredients in English. Interesting. Yeah. It did have this cool little tray. Thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
That's something we could use.
Yeah, that'd be nice. You're always trying to turn the can upside down.
Can't get your hand in there.
Yep.
The translation is Class 5 ham potato chips. So Class 5 ham, whatever that is.
my guess is, it takes me back to a story we had in college where I think it was my brother, when he was at school, was telling me that he was watching the dining hall take a shipment in one afternoon when he was, I think maybe his dorm was right next to the dining hall, that he saw a box come off the truck that said something like grade D beef, and it actually said on the
grade D.
It said fit for human consumption.
Oh no!
Box. So I wonder if, what did that say? Stage 5?
Class 5.
Class 5. I kind of wonder where that is on the ladder.
Is Class 5 good or bad?
We're gonna assume that it was good.
It was good. Well, they were fine. They were good. They were tasty enough.
That it's not the little pig that fell off the truck and
right.
Somebody recovered and cleansed, but whatever.
Well, talking about falling off the truck, if that's no segue at all. The Walking Dead. Now, were you a fan of zombies before The Walking Dead?
Yes, because of 28 Days Later.
Okay.
I'd watched things. Where did the remake of oh my goodness, the Dawn of the Dead, where did that fall?
That was like in 2012. I think. Well, no. Maybe even earlier. That, because you're talking about
the. I was before or after 28 Days Later. The one with Vin Rames and everything. Yeah. It was actually.
No. Was it really 2004? Time goes by. Yeah, 2004. So that would have been, okay, that kind of goes into part of what I was going to talk about. That would have been around the time that the comic book of The Walking Dead came out.
Okay.
So yeah, I was at first
really strong entries that kind of made me fans of the zombie stuff. Before then, the old zombie stuff, the old George Romero movies with the brains. Mm-hmm. I just wasn't into that. I didn't have anything against them. It just didn't do anything for me, so I wasn't a zombie fan.
There was a handful of movies that we had copied on VHS that was, copied from an old VHS, you know how it was. And one of them was, I think I've mentioned before, Night of the Creeps. Another one of them was Night of the Living Dead. And as a kid, I watched Night of the Living Dead so much. I loved it.
You're talking about the old black and white?
The old black and white one. Yeah, the original, the 1968.
I watched that with my son, and it really bothered him. Yeah. He did not like that.
The fact that it's black and white makes it creepier. It really does.
I think it was more the way it ended. It was one of the first kind of
dour
things
ending
where he was like, wow, people suck.
Yeah.
But
the remake made in the 90s, I enjoyed. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah.
But that was
it was pretty close to shot for shot kind of remake too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just like it was new. It was new.
Yeah.
That's all it was. It was just a new version. But yeah, so I from a very young age I was like passively into zombies. I wasn't really seeking zombies out, but I would consider myself a fan of zombies.
Yeah.
So when Shaun of the Dead came out in 2004, it was like the first zombie movie that was kind of like taking punches at the zombie franchise. And I kind of felt at that time that it was kind of like the end of zombies.
Yeah.
I was like, well, to
the point that you're making fun of it, then we're done.
Right. They've done it. They've made the zombies. Now we're making fun of zombies. Okay, well that kind of wraps it up in a neat little bow. And yeah, sure, maybe we'll have more zombie stuff in the future, but it's not going to be like it was. It's not going to be a part of popular culture.
Yeah.
I was very wrong.
Yeah.
Very wrong. So I did look this up because I'd always thought Night of the Living Dead was like the first zombie film. Yeah, again, couldn't be more wrong. Dozens upon dozens upon dozens before that.
Yeah.
Like sent back to like 1913.
Okay, like even silent films
Yeah.
and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I looked up and it's in Wikipedia. I just looked up zombie films. There was 636 films in that zombie films. Now, from what I can tell, Night of the Living Dead established what a modern zombie is. The shambling, the dead rising from the grave, slow, dead-eyed, just mindlessly banging. It established that. Before that, it was like voodoo curse zombie and stuff like that. You know, it was just a different kind of like different flavor.
Yeah.
So, well, no, it wasn't the first zombie film. It was really like the film that established what zombie films should be.
Kind of took it from the, I guess the traditional part of it would be almost like what the Serpent and the Rainbow was about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where like people would come back and think they were dead, and sort of like a lost soul walking the earth.
Interesting. It took it away from the mystical.
Yeah.
It grounded it.
Yeah.
Like Night of the Walking Dead, and didn't really explain why the zombies were around. Now the second one, did you ever see the second one?
No.
That kind of started to explain, like, well, there's nuclear waste in the ground and stuff like that.
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, it was terrible.
But
as a kid,
yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
That was great. See, I'm really into the campier, the better.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was a movie. I didn't look up anything about this. I just know the title. But there was a movie the year before Night of the Living Dead called The Plague of Zombies, and that just I was interested in how many movies before Night of the Living Dead was about zombies, like explicitly about zombies.
I guess the thing that we missed generationally, I think I caught the tail end of it, was that whole drive-in era.
Yeah.
Where you had kind of low-budget B-grade horror movies that were, you know, features at the drive-in. You go to the drive-in and watch 3 movies, you know, in a all evening feature if you wanted to stay there that long, and might have been the early version of making content for content's sake on some of that. But we saw a few drive-throughs when I was a kid, and then they all closed down by the time, you know, I was probably in a couple years into elementary school. So I literally just caught the tail end of that. But
I think I've been to maybe one drive-in, and that was like a nostalgia drive-in.
The theatrical release that we saw that I remember was Rocky 3, the Mr. T one.
Okay.
And I remember we saw that in our old Ford station wagon, little speakers hanging on the thing. And,
and see, I remember tuning in the radio.
Yeah, no, these were this big
little
old
box
speaker,
speaker,
like a walkie-talkie thing that
hook
you
on
just
your
come
door.
and hang on your door.
Yeah.
And sitting on our car with vinyl seats that would burn your skin. But
so Shaun of the Dead was in 2004, and then the Walking Dead show was in 2010, but the Walking Dead comic started in 2003.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I'd ever looked at the time frame on that. It seems like, you know, 28 Days Later made the zombie that was like a fast, scary zombie, and then the Dawn of the Dead kind of played off of that, where they had running zombies and stuff like that. Much more aggressive.
28 Days Later was in 2002.
Yeah. And then this kind of took it back to...
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see how...
lumbering zombies that were...
The Walking Dead kind of put them back into form.
Yeah. They're just dragging around, and half the time... Was it in the first one where he gets to the part where there's just like half of a skeleton that's all decayed, it's still like trying to crawl across the yard and get to him? It was like it was in the first season.
Yeah.
That it kind of take you back to that era of zombies. But,
did you watch the show first or read the comic first?
I watched some of the first season, and then by then I think I was still buying comics at that point over here in Roanoke. That content was all over the place there. I looked at trying to pick up those comics. I think by the time they started issuing omnibus was when I just started reading them. I picked them up. So I was kind of originally started reading, kind of catching back up to where the show was, and then I read past where the show was, because the show kind of moved pretty slowly through some of that very first material. And I got way ahead of it, and probably was the mistake in enjoying the show. because once you have that original story in your head, it's like going to go see Jurassic Park. When you see Jurassic Park in the theater, if you had no exposure to the book at all, you're like, this movie's amazing. I took a girl to go see Jurassic Park, and she complained through the whole thing. Never went on a second date because it ticked me off that I spent money to listen to her complain for 2 hours.
It wasn't like this. It wasn't like this.
She was furious by the time that movie was done. I was like, this is one of the coolest movies I've ever seen. What's wrong with you? It's like, well, they did this and they did this. And I'm like, we're never doing this again.
See, before, I hate to always take it back to Dune, but I'd say, before I watched Villeneuve's Dune, I told myself, take it as it is.
Yeah.
Don't compare it to the novels. Don't compare it to the 1984 Dune. Just take it as it is, and that really helped with my enjoyment of it.
I did a pretty good job, and I think I mentioned in our last segment that Frank Darabont was involved originally. That he did a good job of making it its own thing, but really based pretty heavily on the comic. His storytelling, movie production stuff has always been solid. And I think by the time he actually was removed from the series, it was probably about where I got caught up to reading and reading beyond, because they fired him going into season 2, because I think he had a bigger vision for the series, probably a bigger budget vision for it than they wanted, and I guess they were just like, we can't do this, and that whole team of the AMC people like Galen Hurd and I think Robert Kirkman, the comic book writer, became more involved in the production of it. I think he was involved pretty heavily in season 1 too, but he may have become a little bit more of a director of the whole process once Darabont was gone. But I don't think that hurt it one way or the other. But yeah, the I don't know where you want to go to next on that, but
well, when I went through the series, when I was looking at where I was, because like I told you, I watched it for a while, and then I just dropped off of it. Like I had enough. I'll be honest, through watching Evangelion and playing Maniac Mansion and obsessing over the layout of the mansion, I didn't watch a lot more. I actually just watched about half of season 9. That's where I left off. And that's where they like the whispers.
okay.
And because I thought that was kind of silly at the time. I was like, screw this, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
And it was like right after Rick had died, and I was like, that's enough. The series ended with Rick.
Yeah.
But when I was watching it, because I went back a couple of episodes to continue where I was, kind of like refresh myself. I found that I was enjoying it. I was enjoying it a lot more than I was.
The early seasons are pretty rewatchable.
And well, this season 9. I mean, how many seasons do they have? 11?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's not too many more seasons after where you stopped. They kind of go through the arc with the Whisperers, and then they go to the Commonwealth.
Yeah, season 11. So I mean, I'm pretty close to the end, and
I've got all 3 omnibus, and I've read the first 2, and it's kind of the theme I guess I sort of had on this. We talked about the theme when we talked about Godzilla -1, that you could sum it up with like one word, like redemption. If I had to put one word to The Walking Dead, it's just oversaturation.
Mm-hmm.
It got to a point where there's just so much stuff that was just like, I can't do this anymore. And
that's why I fell off. It was too much. Because around that same time, they came out with Fear the Walking Dead. I watched like one episode of that. It was just too much.
For a while. And it was okay. And this whole show should have been like a lesson / warning to every streaming service out there about just making content for content's sake. Disney obviously did not listen and take any of that from that, but they did Fear the Walking Dead, and they came back here lately with Daryl Dixon and a couple arcs of that, The World Beyond, and then Dead City, and then The Ones Who Live, trying to bring all these characters back in.
Oh my goodness!
They only did one of those. One of those I think was done right, and that's what they should have done with Fear the Walking Dead. Did you watch The World Beyond?
Nope.
The World Beyond was like in Omaha or something.
There's also Tales of the Walking Dead and Dead City.
The Tales of the Walking Dead stuff was ridiculous. It was awful. It was like independent writers writing little stories that were changing characters, and I tried to watch some of that and I stopped because I was like, man, this is just bad. I was like, this is just people just throwing stuff out there that's not even tied to stuff. But
kind of sounds like they were trying to do like a Animatrix kind of situation, like an anthology series.
Not even worth trying to compare those two. But The World Beyond was like this little short series about these younger kids trying to get to like a dad that was like a researcher, and it basically kind of laid it out that there was like a big place in like Seattle, a big place in Omaha, and then like the Commonwealth. There were like the 3 functioning places that were left, and they were all kind of working together. And it was this little short series about how it was sort of a power grab, and I guess it was the Commonwealth just released a bunch of zombies to take out Omaha, to basically take control of that area or eliminate them because they were not agreeing or something like that. But it was like this little short series that just, it started there, it took it up to the end, and it was this little concise thing. The acting and stuff was not great. It did a lot of, it was in that really heavy girl ball stuff where there were some not super capable female characters that were just killing everything 8 times their size. That was a little bit annoying, but that series, if they'd done everything else like that, where they had these little short arcs that were relevant to the actual storyline of the show, I think they would have worked. But everything else is just like content for content's sake. Like the Fear of the Walking Dead almost came back at one point and tied back into Alexandria. And then I guess somebody decided maybe from the show that no, we need to not bring it back around. Let's just keep doing our own thing. Because I think like Morgan and the group, he was going to try to take this group that was like in the South, somewhere like Texas or Mississippi or somewhere like that. And they were going to try to make their way back up to join in Alexandria. And I was like, well, that'd be a cool way to mix these 2 stories. At least there'd be a point to it. And then of course they veered off. And
see, as someone who didn't really know about what was going on in the comics or anything like that, who was just kind of enjoying the show, I think you could point to a lot of things of like why I fell off and like what disinterested me in the series. But the interplay, like the politics between the different settlements, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care about this, Jesus doesn't want to be the leader of the one location and the other location's holding this guy. I don't care. I do care. I like the individual characters. I like their individual stories. But when it starts to, start to look at the world as it gets rebuilt, I think that's kind of where I kind of get disinterested. I don't really want to know about that.
It's the thing that they did in every one of these, and that's what made them so intolerable for me, is that it doesn't matter which one it was, you could pick the one. They had to have a group here and a group here, and this group was bad. This group was almost wiped out by them, and then they find a way to fight back, and they overthrew that guy. Mm-hmm. And that was recycled through every one of these things. And it became the idea of Negan, but it's Negan in Omaha. It's Negan in Seattle. It's Negan here. And that you just can't do that but so many times. I think it was in one of the later seasons of the actual show where they I can't even remember these characters at this point. The kind of blonde love interest of Daryl, the one that had originally owned a dog, was part of they were a scavenger group. That's not their name. But they had this other little group, and it was like this guy that was they wanted to make him like a bad guy, and he was like this little tiny dude with like a stocking hat and a mustache, and then like, it's like, have y'all run out of people to cast as bad guys? Like, this guy looks like a science teacher or something, and he's not convincing as a bad guy, and if you want to sell me a bad guy story, get me a bad guy. I mean...
See, I think narratively, I would have much rather seen the established characters that you came to grow to love become the bad people. When they start just kind of like bringing characters in that you've never seen before, like, hey, here's a new bad guy. Yeah. It gets tiresome.
Yeah. It literally gets to the point where I couldn't tell you who they fought because it was just fighting another figurehead,
right,
for reasons that were the same as the last reasons. And it's just the interesting thing that I'm kind of jumping around in Fear the Walking Dead. There's this little arc of it. It was a kind of interesting side story, but again, I don't think they knew what to do with it, where there was like a beached nuclear sub in maybe the Gulf around Texas that somebody took control of and decided that they were going to like end all this, and they launched the nukes on themselves. And that was kind of fascinating as a storyline, but again, it was just, it couldn't get away from that. Here's the bad guy and here's the good guys, so we have to stop the bad guy.
Yeah.
But he actually, like, in trying to stop him, they still got the nukes launched, and they kind of lived in this like little nuclear fallout area of Texas or wherever it was it's supposed to be. And that was almost kind of got me back into that, but I don't know, the writing and stuff at that point, it kind of got just poor. And really post 2020 was kind of where it all fell off, I think, where they got shut down, couldn't make stuff for a while, and then when they came back, in addition to all the virus nonsense that went on, you had all the other social things that had happened, and you had lots of people writing that I don't think have had any experience writing.
That's what I said before. They lost the talent. So that something happened, and people who were writing it and were actually talented, they're like, well, I got to go do something else.
I think some case they lost it. Some case they felt like they had to promote people that, for whatever reason you want to say, you can probably get what I'm saying, but put people in the spots that just didn't know how to run a show, and it showed.
For me, it always goes back to that Chekhov's gun. Whenever I don't mind generally most anything you put in a show or a movie or whatever, as long as you justify it. And too many times things are changed or added to stories for the sake of having those things. It doesn't benefit the story.
Yeah,
it benefits some other external idea or motivation of the writer or producer or whatever.
Yeah.
Now you were kind of going along the lines of with the whole girl boss thing. One of the things that I got reminded of when I was watching season 9 was how awesome Carol is. I mean, Carol is a fantastic character.
This is how I kind of broke down what I wanted to talk about as I went through the main groups of characters and kind of wrote a little brief thing about how they were different from the comics.
Oh, great!
To the show.
Yeah, let's go through it.
Do you want to jump to Carol or just start with?
We'll start with Rick, and I'll give my thoughts about Rick.
The Carol one is interesting, but she's 4 or 5 spots down. Rick, not too different from show. The casting of Andrew Lincoln was great. He looks actually kind of like the guy from the book, and I think as the book progressed too, they probably made him gradually look a little bit more like Andrew Lincoln,
right? Yeah.
Too, but
that happens in Marvel a lot.
The interesting things that I noted with him is that at the prison, from before the prison, that actually was part of the prison with the governor. The governor chopped off his hand to show, just to prove a point.
Yeah.
You're not messing with me. The governor was a definitely differently portrayed character there. So from that point on, Rick doesn't have a hand. I think they worked that back into The Ones Who Live, or like after he reappears and Michonne goes to find him and he's working for the Commonwealth, that he cuts his hand off to try to get away or something, because somehow or another it mattered that his hand was cut off that late into the series. But he remains the main character. He doesn't get eliminated at the bridge. Of course, he didn't get killed at the bridge. The helicopter from the Commonwealth comes in and takes him back. They identify him as they're looking for alphas and betas or something, or type A, type B. I can't remember what the garbage girl's name is, the lady from the trash people. She actually found Rick there by the bridge after he blew it up and rescues him and takes him away. That's TV show canon. He stays kind of the central character all the way up through the Commonwealth.
Okay.
The most interesting part, I think, for the people that really got into the show is that he's with Lori up through the prison, and that's handled differently. I'll get to that in a second.
Hang on a second. Wasn't there a time jump from Rick blowing up the bridge to like the Whisperers? Like 6 years.
No.
His little girl grew up a lot.
that's another character that's way down the
All
list.
right.
But yeah, they do some time jump stuff in the show that doesn't
Okay.
happen in the comics.
So, but in the show, he was just like captured for years.
No, he never really leaves the story. He's not ever gone. He's
In the comic.
in the comic, yes.
I'm talking about the show.
In the show, he comes back and is taken back to the Commonwealth.
But how do they
and
explain where he's been all this time?
that he starts working for like their military, and then he's been doing that while Michonne is on his way to find
I'm sure I'll get to these episodes because I do plan on watching it, but casually.
Yeah.
Does he explain why he never bothered telling anybody he was alive?
I haven't watched that stuff to know.
Okay.
I've seen some the man of recaps, that little guy with the YouTube and the tuxedo t-shirt is
Yeah.
kind of my friend at this point.
Oh.
But if I want to see what happens in something like that, I just go watch his 12-minute thing.
That's gonna be. I'm gonna be interested to hearing that.
The interesting part of the canon is that after Lori dies, and it's completely a different scenario, that Andrea and Rick are a thing for the rest of the time. There's never a Rick and Michonne.
Oh, interesting.
They don't like get married because you can't get married, I guess, at this point. But they basically live as man and wife for the rest of the show.
So
she actually outlives Rick.
That probably happened solely because of the popularity of Michonne.
And
In
I
the
guess
TV
that's
show.
the other thing too. I mentioned Frank Darabont, the girl that played Andrea, the guy that played Dale, and somebody else. They're like in every movie that he does.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
what's her name? Lori. I think her actual name's Lori something, isn't it?
Well, the woman who plays Andrea?
That plays Andrea.
I don't know. Let's see.
But anyway, I think that they had to shift
Lori Holden.
Lori Holden. I think they had to shift her storyline in the thing because I think she left to go do something else. And that's what happens with TV shows, unfortunately.
Yeah,
is
you
that
have real people doing real things.
why I would be so much more satisfied if you would just leave the character and then just recast it instead of just changing the storyline completely. But that became like the thing that everybody was a fan of, was Rick and Michonne. That never happens in the comic. Michonne takes such a different path. But if you want to go by character, I kind of did it by the way you introduced them. Lori was the next one. Lori has a Judith in prison. Lori, the governor, one of his, I forget if it's a character that you ever really see in the show or not, but there's a girl that comes from the governor's group that joins them in the TV show. I don't know if it's supposed to be the same girl or not. And she stays all the way through the end of the show. But she's ordered by the governor to kill Lori running away. This is in the big prison fight at the end. Lori is carrying Judith and is shot through the back, and the bullet comes through and just blows Judith apart. Judith and Lori are gone. There's no time jump on how Judith grows up because Judith is killed as an infant in the book.
Oh.
So.
Well then.
Yeah.
I as an aside, I did actually try to obtain the compendium. So this is like a compilation.
Yeah.
A couple of libraries locally have them, and I went by a couple of times, but yeah, they were checked out.
I've got them there. I'm going to spoil most of them
That's,
for you.
That's fine. I was in contact with a guy on Facebook Marketplace that had them for sale, and I was like, I'll buy them from you.
Yeah.
He never responded, so I don't know why he even has that up.
The beauty.
I didn't want to buy them for $60.
Yeah,
or
most of them are. I think I might have got them when they were like in their 40s,
yeah,
or so. But that's just inflation at this point,
right?
But
anyway.
Man,
so
the way the books and stuff are written, I don't know that I've ever remembered a comic that really, on paper, gets you to those scenes that are, because sometimes he'll take, instead of it panels, it's a whole page of her seeing the bullet coming through, killing Judith, them falling down on the next page, and then like the zombies are just like mauling them and stuff, and you're sitting there looking at it like, holy crap. I've never read a comic like the stuff that Kirkman did, to where you see something on page that's not moving and you're still just like your eyes open, mind blown, mouth dropped, like holy hell. And that was probably the first. incident in the book where I was like, no, they didn't just do that. And you flip the page, and it's not that like maybe the bullet missed the baby. It's like, no, the next page there's like
Baby
limbs and parts and stuff flying up and zombies. You're like, holy crap. But so I could see them not wanting to do that in the show, but
Yeah.
but changing it to where Judith is an ongoing character through the whole thing is
That's wild.
pretty big.
That really changes the dynamic of the group.
Yeah, it does. And that comes to the next thing with Carl. 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 There's a lot of different arcs with him. One of them is with Shane, but I'll stick with Carl for a second. The guy, the mayor of Alexandria is a guy, not the little short lady,
Okay.
whatever her name was in the show, named Douglas. Kind of the same scenario when Alexandria is getting overrun. He's accidentally shot by Douglas, by the mayor, so he does get shot, loses the eye. You think that he's gone, because it's when they show it in the book, it's like most of this side of his face is gone, and you're like, we just lost Carl. And Carl lives through that, but the other kind of main story arc that's different with him is that he falls in love with Lydia, Alpha's daughter, that girl that kind of is back and forth between the Whisperers and them. Like he sneaks off. That's kind of his first romantic interaction with a woman, and he's doing that. He's also like fascinated with Negan and becomes great friends with Negan. So he's like the guy who's...
See, I felt like they kind of touched on that a little bit in the show.
They did bring some of that into the show.
A little bit.
But to the point in the book where you're like, if Negan ever gets out of here, he's going to probably turn Carl against Rick, kind of thing.
Okay.
And then story-wise, another spoiler alert, spoilers be damned at this point, Carl outlives Rick in the comics.
Okay.
He kind of becomes... I don't know that he becomes the leader. I think I stopped reading at the end of the second compendium, and that's kind of where the Whispers are like, have kind of asserted their domination over them. All the heads on the stakes and stuff happen. But I didn't get to the conclusion of that. But I think at the end of the third one, I think Michonne is basically kind of becomes the leader of everything. But
the whole Carl leaving, wasn't that like something to do with the actor again?
That was like, it's kind of one of those things you almost have to, you don't want to get into people's personal lives and their choices. The reason the way they portrayed it is he's going to leave he don't want to be tied to the series. He's going to do other things, and I haven't seen him do anything. But I hope maybe it was just them taking away from the film stuff and letting him get an education, grow up, and decide what he wants to do. Lord knows if anybody had any sense at all with any of the money they make on these things, it's like being an NFL player. If you would just play for a couple of years at league minimum and invest your money, you'd be set for life. And hopefully the family of Carl was able to do that.
How familiar are you with this? Is complete an aside. How familiar are you with Star Trek? Does that woman look familiar at all? There was a character named Tasha Yar on the Next Generation Star Trek, and she was there for like one season.
Yeah.
And she left kind of like for that same reason. She was like, I want to do other things, and she never did anything else.
Yeah, I mean that's their family's decision, and I hope he at least invested money. And the only thing I kind of worry on stuff like that is I've seen him do the con circuit, and my assumption is that
that's what he's doing.
Celebrities showing up at cons means they can't find work and they need money. And I've seen
I can't imagine very many people go to cons. Celebrities go to cons just because they love it.
Yeah, yeah, and the amount of money some of them make by signing pictures is kind of obscene.
Cough, cough. Mark Hamill, cough, cough.
Yeah, just even ones that I like.
Yeah.
The other interesting part with Carl is the whole Shane thing. Mm-hmm. Shane was such a huge character, and I can see them why they did that in the show, because John Barenthal is an awesome actor, and if I had him, I'd want to keep him involved as long as possible too. Now,
one of the criticisms I had at the time when the show came out, because I did like look up the comic.
Yeah.
Because like I said, when I first became aware of the comic, I was like, I'm over zombies. when the show came out, I did go and like kind of compare, like, well, this is what the comic character looks like. This is what the show character looks like. Bernthal is one of these small guys. He's a small guy.
Yeah.
Shane in the comics is like this brute.
Yeah.
And that kind of that was one of the things I remember kind of comparing the two. I was like, it doesn't seem to be a great casting, but Bernthal's a fantastic actor, so he holds it.
And I think that's probably comes into the way they wrote that into such an arc in the thing, is because we can't just kill this guy off.
Right.
Shane basically screws up in the comic at the camp outside of Atlanta and gets multiple people there. There's a whole bunch of characters there. I don't think all of them are introduced. They're not all the same from the TV show to the book. Gets a bunch of them killed. They get away from there, and I guess the next place they go is it to Herschel's farm? Or is it before they get to the prison? Either way, might be before the prison. They decide they're going to go hunting, and Rick is still it's pretty close to when they leave the camp. Rick is going to confront him about, that you need to not be involved in these decisions for us because your decisions got a bunch of people killed back there.
Right. Shane
loses his crap and gets ready to just beat Rick's butt, and then he grabs his gun. It looks like apparently he's got a big temper problem in the book as well. Acts like he's going to shoot him. Carl shoots him because he thinks he's getting ready to kill his dad. And that's the end of Shane. It's really early in the book. It's like he's going nuts, having like a just maniacal temper tantrum, yelling at Rick.
So
grabs his gun. Carl's just watching it from a distance, and I think he thinks he's getting ready to shoot Rick, and Carl's just like, pow.
So did he have an affair with Lori?
There's a flashback later that they did sleep together.
Okay.
I don't know that it's ever really... It's kind of hard to separate that out from watching the show at this point.
Right.
I don't think that it was really ever hinted to be that he was Judith's father, because I guess it doesn't matter because Judith doesn't make it very long.
Yeah, I mean, that's from the show. I remember that being like the insinuation, but then it kind of seemed like they were like, no, she's Rick's.
The interesting thing too.
Did they ever address that in the show?
That they kind of go under the assumption in the show that's like, could be yours, could be yours. Okay. We don't know.
Okay.
I don't think they ever really say that. They acknowledge the fact that they both slept with Lori, and it could be either, but they never take a DNA test to establish it.
I feel like in season 9 when they aged her up, they kind of answered that question. She looks a lot like Rick. So
yeah,
I guess she could look like Lori. Anyway,
the other interesting thing is, like, I can't remember where it happens in the comic, is that they find out, I think it's at the prison that they find out that you've all got this virus crap in you, and if you die, you're going to reanimate.
See, I felt like that in the show. I felt like that was...
I didn't like that
at
introduction.
the camp.
No, they find that out at the CDC is when he's told that by the doctor.
That's right.
But I don't think he tells people that at the prison, I think.
Okay.
But however, it's one of the characters dies at the camp, and she wasn't bitten, and she still comes back. And I think they just sort of put 2 and 2 together. There's never any interaction with the CDC.
Maybe that's when the audience figured it out.
But Rick goes back to where he buried Shane and digs him up and shoots him. Because
wow.
Because he's in the dirt, reanimated, and he's like, I'm not going to let my old partner suffer. So he goes back and just digs him up. It's like, pow.
That would have been a powerful scene.
Yeah. I don't know the reason when you get into changing the story arcs of stuff, why you cut some things out. Some things, I guess, are a little bit much for TV, and some, I guess, are just you veered off the storyline so much that it's kind of hard to work the other thing back in.
Well, I mean, having to incorporate both Shane and Judith, I mean, that's pretty impressive that they did that.
Yeah.
So those are some pretty major characters that they had to keep around for quite a bit longer.
Yeah, and it might be that, I don't know how things work. John Barenthal's like, I'll come to your show, but you're not going to kill me in 3 episodes.
Right.
You're going to get me an arc if I'm doing it. If not, get somebody else.
Well, was he really popular before?
I don't know.
That was my first exposure to him.
First thing I knew him in. Yeah. Because he did the Punisher stuff after that, right?
Yeah. Maybe he just knew what he was worth.
Maybe. I mean, it might be that all the everybody always just says it's the actor. Sometimes it might not be the actor. Sometimes they might have agents
Yeah.
that are.
Oh yeah, the agents can be shrewd.
Some of the guys could just be, hey, you get me a job?
Yeah.
And yeah, this is the job. This is what we got you. But I had Carol as the next one.
Okay.
Carol is such a huge character in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Carol is like this weak girl. She's much younger in the show. Really kind of clingy and needy. Tyrese is a character that shows up at the prison, and there's a much bigger power struggle between him and Rick. Because there's these guys at the prison. I think they're there briefly in the show, but they're much bigger characters in the book that they have to share their prison with originally. And Rick knows the guy that's from the prison is like dangerous and he wants to kill him. They wait till there's like a kind of a melee with zombies, and Rick just kills the guy. And Tyrese sees that, and so Tyrese is like freaked out about Rick. So there's this tension back and forth there. Tyrese and Carol get together. Then Tyrese, Michonne shows up at the prison just like she does in the show. Tyrese starts kind of messing around with Michonne, kind of leaves Carol. She doesn't have anybody to go. I think something happens to her. I don't know if she gets beat up or something. Rick helps heal her, so she immediately attaches to Rick and like kind of falls in love with him, and is like desperate to the point that she knows that like that Rick and Lori are together. She's like, I can just be the third part of the marriage.
Jeez.
And Rick's like, no. So she slits her wrist and kills herself in front of Rick and Sophia and everybody, and she's gone. So there's your Carol arc.
I mean, why even name the character Carol?
Yeah, I mean, you could have.
So she wasn't married, wasn't an abused wife.
No. There might have been a husband at the camp. I don't remember that part. And it might be why she's always so weak and kind of clingy that she never comes out of that kind of character and just stays that way.
See, that's one of the things I like about Carol on the show is, I mean, I think she's a girl boss done right.
Yeah.
Because it shows why she has the fortitude that she has.
Yeah.
You know, she went through hell before everyone went through hell.
Yeah.
So she knew how to handle it.
Yeah.
But in the comic, she went through hell and it broke her.
She went through hell and just as a weak person and can never get out of it. And
that I think as a character, I think that is a valid, there's a valid character to have. I think that would have been interesting to have a character like that in the show.
How many millions of people in the country in a decade commit suicide and live through things like that could have been a way to address that. But
I'm surprised there's no zombie. I mean, there's so many zombie films I probably have, but I've never seen a zombie film that kind of has that premise. Be like, well, there's a zombie apocalypse. It wasn't that bad until everybody killed themselves.
Yeah.
And then they were everywhere.
The other interesting thing with Carol is her daughter Sophia.
Wait, does she have a daughter in the?
Yeah, that's the Bard girl.
Oh, okay, yeah. I completely forgot about her.
Sophia sees her mom kill herself.
Yeah.
Kind of obviously is traumatized by that. She's just taken in by Rick and Andrea, and they raise her. She never gets in the barn, and that's probably one of the most striking scenes in the show.
Yeah,
is the search for Sophia. And I knew it was coming. I'd already seen it. I started watching it with the family and stuff, and you kind of knew that was coming. And I was kind of looking at them. I was like, y'all are not gonna like this, but I was trying to not spoil it for them. And they open the barn, and of course Sophia comes out, and you're like, wow. It's like that's. But I always was wondering. I think that's past Darabont being involved. I don't know who wrote that part. I forget what season that was in. That's a very Frank Darabont kind of thing. If you've seen like The Mist and some of the other things he was involved in, that felt like him to me. But maybe he was gone by that point. I honestly forget the seasons and how they broke down. But so that was kind of the interesting with Carol. I don't know if that's a good spot to jump to Daryl or just say that till the end.
Yeah, Daryl.
Daryl doesn't exist.
At all. At all.
He's a creation for the show.
Oh my goodness. See, one of the things one of my notes was I wanted to talk about how characters from like on page are different from films, and sometimes a character can work on a page but can't work on a film.
There's like this little redneck dude that's at the prison that gets killed too, and he has like a trucker's hat on and stuff, and I was remembering that as Daryl, and I went back and looked, and it's not Daryl. Daryl and Merle both are show creations, and Daryl actually auditioned. He wanted to be Merle.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And then they, I guess, in seeing it, they wanted an older and younger brother dynamic, and I guess one of them knew. Oh Lord, what's his name that played Merle from Guardians of the Galaxy, the blue guy?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name though.
I think they actually sought him out to go be Merle. I think they
Michael Rooker.
Yeah, Rooker. I think they had this image in their head. This is who they wanted Merle to be. So that's kind of like the funny thing. It's like now let's get to Daryl. Daryl doesn't exist. It's like there's.
Well, I would. What I was going to say is Daryl is one of those characters that, like, just because of the charisma of Norman Reedus, I think it works on screen. I was going to say I can imagine it not working on the page, like him being a kind of a hard character to read. And
when you watched the show, did you watch the After the Walking Dead thing that would come on for like an hour where they had guests and stuff?
I watched it once.
We watched it pretty regularly early on.
Yeah.
Just because it was
Talking Dead.
Yeah. It became a thing, and I think they even sold merch. It was like if you kill Daryl, we riot. It was
right.
like he was like such a popular character in the show that it was just like.
Well, I would really like to know if any show, because if any show has ever been written for the fans and influenced by what fans want, it would be this show.
Yeah, I think it stayed on that track at least up through 2020, and I think it became just an exercise in learning how to write for people that had never written before after that.
But they weren't. One thing I do respect is they weren't against going against what fans wanted.
Yeah.
For the sake of the show. Glenn, perfect example. I was so upset when Glenn died. I was so mad.
You want to do him next?
Yeah.
He's probably the one character that is truest to the comic. There's not very much that's different there.
Okay. He's a great character.
It's again when he's killed, he's the only one Negan kills. He doesn't kill
a bunch of people.
He doesn't kill Abraham. And then go back to, because in the show he goes back to kill Glenn after Daryl fights back as a thing, and it's completely he's the one, and it's another one of those you flip the page and it's like a full page thing, and there's it's graphic, man. He's hitting him in the head,
eyeball falling out,
his eyes like hanging out, and he's like still trying to say Maggie, and it's one of those things too. It's super powerful the way it's in the book. It's awful. I mean, it's horrible, but he's probably the one that they don't really screw up, if screw up is the right word, that they don't
alter,
they don't warp or change. So Glenn stays really true to it. Andrea doesn't seem like as much of a major character from the show, because she dies during the governor arc. She kind of becomes a thing with the governor, and then she gets bitten, and you don't see her die, but I can't remember, did somebody shoot her or she shoot herself?
I barely remember her. I barely remember her as a character. I remember her seeming like she should have been more capable than she was.
Yeah. Well, again, she's with in the book. I don't remember if that's part of the show or not.
Good likeness to the comic, though. They did a good job on the casting.
She's awesome actors. I love Laurie Holman. She's with Dale, the old guy, and he's a lot heavier in the comic book, but still an older guy.
Yeah.
They are together. You actually get to see a scene of them together in the comic book, which I'm glad they didn't do that in the show. But the Dale, he gets killed at the farm, right? Because like he goes out and gets bitten while they're out. Something to do with Carl. I can't remember. Carl's going out at night trying to sort of test himself against zombies, and he almost gets killed, and Dale gets bitten trying to help him or something like that. I can't remember how that goes. He actually goes way beyond that to where they actually get to, was it Gabriel, the minister, into those hunters that are actually eating people. Dale is the guy that they take and like eat his leg, not the younger black guy. I can't remember what his name was in the show. I think he came in from the Gabriel arc too. Not the minister, but he was like, he might have been a governor soldier. I forget which one. But the guy's kind of laughing because he's feeding them tainted meat,
Right.
Because he's been bitten. That's Dale in the comic.
Okay.
He still sticks around for a while after that. He stays alive, but he's really disabled and old and kind of bitter and stuff. And then he finally he gets bitten. I forget where the context is where he gets bitten. He eventually dies off. I think Andrea puts him down when he dies, so he doesn't come back or something like that. And then, like, after Lori dies and after Dale dies, she I think she even says she needs some time to herself. She takes time to herself, and then she and Rick kind of get together, and the whole Rick Michonne romance for the rest of the show is actually, in the book, is Rick and Andrea. So, and then, of course, the next one down that line is Michonne. Pretty true, very true casting-wise. I mean, they did that. That's a perfect one-to-one on, is her name Dana? The actress?
Danai?
Danai.
D-A-N-A-I.
To Michonne in the comic. My first exposure to Michonne was, I hadn't got that far reading it, and it hadn't been introduced in the show yet. We were in the toy section at like Walmart or Target, and past it, I was like, oh, they got Walking Dead figures. And there's this
Who's that?
There's this character of Michonne. She was there. She had a samurai sword, a power drill, and a spoon. And I was like, what on earth is this character? Why does she have a spoon? And that gets to the in the arc with the governor. She's the one that's taken prisoner by the governor. I think they take Lori in the show and threaten to do they not Lori, Glenn's girlfriend. What's her name? Maggie. They take Maggie and Glenn in the show and kind of torture them.
Okay.
But not as bad as what they do to Michonne. In Michonne, it's brutal. Like, multiple people, I think, rape her. They beat her up. They're pounding her face in and all, just physically abusing her.
Just from what you said so far, I get the feeling that, because the show was fine with being gruesome.
Yeah.
But towards zombies, like, it wasn't really, it never was really gruesome towards people. That could be a standards thing.
It might have had to.
But the comic sounds like it's gruesome towards people.
The Michonne, that was the part where I was like reading the book, and it was like you'd flip the page and be like, oh my gosh. And then you flip the page. It was like 5 or 6 pages when she comes back to get the governor, where she's using a power drill, like screwing holes in him, and she digs like an eye out with a spoon.
Oof.
And it's
There's
just
the spoon.
she just goes medieval big time on that, and I was like, oh my goodness. So that was amazing in that. I mean, amazing from it's just so shocking that you're just sitting there in amazement watching it. Not amazing like, wow, I really like digging people's eyes out. But then she kind of goes through this arc. She gets with Tyrese until he dies. And basically, I like her arc through the book is everybody that she falls in love with dies.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how her character started in the whole zombie apocalypse. Her man died.
Yeah. I think they do get some backstory like with that about how that happened. I think they have a couple flashback scenes in one of the shows that kind of shows her with the two that end up being her companions that she carries around.
That was such a good reveal.
Then she actually gets with Morgan, and then Morgan dies. And then when Ezekiel enters, she becomes the thing with Ezekiel. And Ezekiel...
so Ezekiel's not with Carol.
Ezekiel ends up on the stake.
I mean, Carol's dead. So we're obviously not with Carol.
Yeah. Ezekiel is all the way through to the end. He's the main one, kind of the central character that gets staked by the Whisperers.
Oh, okay.
So you lose Ezekiel then. It's kind of the same thing where the Whisperers kind of come and warn the folks there, like, this is our territory. Y'all need to run off, leave us alone.
Now, maybe this is because I haven't watched all of season 9 and I haven't watched 10 or 11, but I kind of get the feeling by this time they're kind of gun shy. Like, they have their people. These are the people we like, and they want to keep these people around.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of the feeling I get.
It's like what do you call it when you test group characters with like people? And they're like, oh, this one tests really well. We can't kill that one.
Can't kill that one off.
Let's write this.
I mean, that's why Daryl lived enough to go to Paris. He's trotting around the world now, but apparently.
But Michonne stays kind of like buddy. She really is like Stonewall Jackson to Lee, her to Rick. She's the one that he kind of leans on to kind of get through a lot of the tough decisions and stuff like that. And she's always kind of the supporting, kind of the mastermind of a lot of the things that he does kind of come around to thinking. And then,
but never romantically involved.
Rick, look at how he goes. But after, I think he actually dies from a bite late in the Commonwealth or something like that, or she becomes like, I forget what the title they put her, because the whole thing with the governor of the Commonwealth, they oust her. Oh no, that's right. The governor of the Commonwealth, her son assassinates Rick because he gets the mom kicked out of being the governor, and he just comes to him in the middle of the night, and just shoots him to death. So, but they take care of that. I can't remember what that kid's name is. And Michonne just becomes like they create a position. It's like a judge advocate or something. I can't remember what the title is. And she just kind of becomes sort of like not even like a military leader of the Commonwealth, but sort of like she is like the Supreme Court / governor of the Commonwealth. So she kind of becomes the main thing. And I think they put a statue up, for Rick. He's kind of become like their messiah figure, because he's the one that's kind of got them all to that. They all acknowledge the fact that he's the only reason that any of this even made it that far. And I'd assume that's where the comic ends. I have not read it to the end, and then talked about Glenn, Daryl. That's kind of the main characters. There's a lot of other side characters that all do different arcs and stuff. Like I mentioned, like Abraham not getting beat to death by Negan. He's just walking up the street one day talking with Eugene, I think. You remember Dwight, the guy with the burned face from Negan? Dwight like just comes out from behind a building and shoots him from behind with a crossbow, like sticks an arrow through his head.
See, I imagine that's really kind of how that kind of stuff would go down in a post-apocalyptic world like that. So people would die unceremoniously. It's just he's like walking down the street and
he's walking with Eugene, and Eugene like starts to like notice that like he's slurring his words, and he doesn't even realize he's been shot. He's just sitting there, and he's got like an arrow coming out from the back of his head through like at the front of his face, and then his speech stops and he just falls to the ground, and that's Abraham. But he's another great casting. Is it Abraham 4? What's his name?
Yeah, Michael Cutlitz.
That dude is almost identical to the way he looks in the book. That was a great casting for him, and I'm sure that probably made his career, as I've never seen him before in anything.
Speaking of Eugene, he's a character I assume, again, I haven't read the comic, I assume works better on page. Because I get what they're doing with him. I don't feel as if he's a believable character.
The way he was when he was first introduced is pretty close to the comic. Excuse me. I think most of that continuing story of him kind of hit with that 20 and 20 break and newer, to where these same people that made every Marvel movie, Thor has to tell a joke every 7 seconds and blah blah. Tried to make him into this like comical character that he really wasn't. He really was just this kind of pathetic liar.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing that gets me about it. I feel like it's, oh look, he said something in a funny way.
That was a comic creation, or I mean a show creation thing, and it was just that genre that I guess became popular of let's make everybody in the world be quippy and sarcastic and funny, and it didn't work for him. I didn't.
Okay.
Physically, he was pretty good casting.
Pretty spot on.
Pretty good casting for him too.
Well, it definitely seems to be kind of a general comment about The Walking Dead is that they were good at casting.
Whole trio of him, Eugene, and Rosita. The girl that they cast for Rosita is identical to the girl from the book. It's cool to see that portion of it to where they get it right.
Shane's the only one.
the whole thing where so many things just turned in different directions. Was it because they just couldn't go there? Was it because I mean, the show wouldn't have gone on as long if you'd let these characters die when they died.
Right.
You had to keep reasons to keep them alive, and I think that's why it became so uninteresting. I think eventually is that it, what's the thrill in the show if we know that our favorite 8 people are still going to be there every time? I mean, the whole attraction to a zombie apocalypse thing is that anybody could die anytime. You could just fall asleep hard and wake up and be getting mauled by zombies. I mean, it's when you remove that terror from it, it really does become a soap opera about who's in control of what town, and it stops becoming a zombie thing.
It really seems to me like there's reason, if you're a fan of one, there's reason to consume the other.
Yeah.
Like, it seems different enough.
Oh yeah, I've got it on my list to go back and read. I'm still just kind of working my way through Godzilla and just doing some random things, and it's almost like with Evangelion for you. When I get those books back out, I want to start back at the beginning and just read them again, and I just want to do it back to back to back and just get all the way through the story. And that's hard to find a block of time to do something like that, but I think the story wraps up at the end of the 3rd compendium. I know there were some other little spin-off comic things from it, but I hope at least that gets you to the end of Rick's story, because at that point, that story's done. I don't care what else you do. Yeah. He's the Luke Skywalker of the story. It all centers around him. The story needs to stop when he dies. That's all the other characters that help you get you there. That's fine to know where they ended up. You can do the little thing like you see at the end of the movie that Randy moved to Spain and lived happily with a bunch of bullfighters. You can do that if you want to.
This is where they ended up.
Yeah.
Kind of makes me think of a completely different show, Michael of The Office. When Michael Scott left The Office, like, they did 2 more seasons. And yeah, it was The Office.
Which one was that? Which one is Michael?
Steve Carell.
Oh, okay.
Like the boss.
Okay.
And when he left, the show was over.
I've never watched any of The Office. It's one of those things that became such a popular thing and so many memes and stuff from it. It's like I don't want to watch it at this point, because
I was gonna say I'm
gonna be disappointed about what I find, probably.
I think it might have been a product of the time. I've gone back and watched some episodes, and I still enjoy them because I enjoyed them before, but I don't know if someone watching them today would really get the humor anymore. It's because the times have changed.
Some of the actors like Carell seem to think that they're so, or at least portray themselves to think that everything they do is so funny, to the point that I don't really enjoy watching those people do comedy anymore. I like them when they're young comics trying to sort of make a name for themselves. And Robin Williams never became pretentious. He always was just trying to entertain you. And some of these other people think that, hey, I'm Steve Carell, you should come watch my movie and laugh at me because I said so. And I'm like, no.
I think sometimes when you get to know a character in a particular role or in a particular way, when you see them outside of that role, it's off-putting. Yeah. I'm that way with Bob Odenkirk. He's great as Saul Goodman. He is fantastic. But what he likes to do is more like skit comedy. And I don't see him as that.
Yeah.
And so when I see his skit comedy, it's like improv skit comedy. I'm like, this is weird. I don't get this. But hey,
there was something that we started watching. I think when we still had AMC Plus, where he was a professor at like a community college or a college or something. I have no idea what that show was called. It was actually pretty funny, and it really was driven by him. There were some people they tried to write into it that were less interesting, people that kind of tolerated because he was in it. It was honestly, had a lot of pretty woke characters that I was not so much excited about, but I do not remember what that thing was called. But it was he was in charge of he was like one of the senior professors, and he just completely was like burned out and kind of hated life at that point. And he just, his character was very relatable, very funny.
Lucky Hank.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with, like I said, I've enjoyed the like the scripted stuff that I've seen him in.
Yeah.
So I mean, I might enjoy that.
It wasn't like a goofy comedy. It was just like he was an angry old man, or just a disillusioned old man.
Yeah.
He was just tired, and he played that character well. I loved the thing with was it Nobody, where he's just the.
I still wish that was a TV series.
It was like the old man John Wick.
Yeah, I wish it was a TV series because I think it could have made sense to have you have John Wick films. Well, here's like a TV show, John Wick.
Yeah,
but I understand that not everything is
probably
a TV series.
Probably guess to just keep that one contained. It was fun.
Right.
So,
overstaying their welcome.
In the wrong hands, it would become The Walking Dead.
So aside from the show, do you have any interest in watching any of the offshoot shows?
No, none whatsoever. The World Beyond thing, I like that as the idea of it. It made sense in advancing the whole storyline of everything else. Everything else here is just, like I said, they group tested Daryl and Carol. And it's like, and Negan, and we like this, so let's make some story about. I don't even know what Negan and Maggie are doing in New York.
I have a hard time with that. Just narratively, I have a hard time accepting that Maggie would ever trust Negan. Ever.
You beat my spouse to death in front of me, then the first thing I'm doing is I'm killing you in your sleep.
Yeah.
There's no coming back from that. There's no. I'll accept your apology. It's like, no.
And from how they set Maggie up as a character, she's not the type of person that would have forgiven him.
She hung the mayor of Hilltop. I mean,
so yeah, I don't. And I was when I first saw them, saw that they were doing that kind of stuff. I was like, they better not make them lovers, because I could see them doing that. I could see some hack writer saying, "We're gonna do this because it's gonna shake things up."
I don't know. I'm interested to get into the to that third compendium, which again I want to do it right and kind of go back through and kind of refresh my memory on everything. So it'll take me a while to get there. I think Negan does. I don't know if he escapes or if they turn him loose. I think he escapes, but he is. They kind of portray that in the show a little bit. Then once he gets out, he realizes that he doesn't have anything, and
that's in the show too. Yeah,
Alexandria is kind of what he needs to do. So I think he just goes out on his own and gets Alpha and just beheads her and brings the head back. That's how he comes back. He comes back to them like, I fixed your problem. I don't think it's the way they portrayed it in the show, like it's a big secret deal between he and Carol and all that stuff. I don't think it's like that at all. I think, well, obviously because Carol's dead years ago, but
see, I'm fine with characters being redeemed. That's fine. I love a good redemption arc, but I just don't buy that a person could get past that. That's all.
Negan,
and maybe they portray it well. Maybe there's always this tension between them, but I don't know.
Everybody loves. I mean, good Lord, when you went to a con for the first 2 years after Negan was introduced,
everybody's dressed as Negan.
Every fourth person there was dressed as Negan. So I mean, he was
everybody loves Negan,
cultural icon.
Yeah.
If you go back and look at him at the book, though, he was literally Dwayne Johnson. He was like the whole idea of him versus Rick, and he personally.
He's Jeffrey, kind of a.
Jeffrey Dean Morgan makes it believable enough that you just can't mess with me. I'm going to beat you every way you turn around. They make it more visual in the comic book to where like he's just like, blah. And it's like, if you try to fight me, I'm going to break you in half.
Well, the things I've seen Jeffrey Dean Morgan in since then, he's not a huge guy.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of the same situation where he plays larger on screen. He was comedian in Watchmen, and he played as a pretty big character in that.
Yeah, probably because he's 6 foot tall, and in Hollywood, that's a giant against all these little like Chris Evans midgets that are. I take steroids, and I'm still 5'4", but yeah, I thought like that was interesting in the comic that he is like massive.
He's just a beast,
and I think that's one of those things that, just like an old parable, that would be how you would portray his power, and that is just how much bigger. And it's like if he and Rick ever fight each other, there's no way, but like. The way Rick gets him in the book, they've got that scene there where Eugene makes all the guns blow up or whatever. They're actually like they're going to negotiate in the Saviors versus Alexandria War. I think Negan kind of comes to him thinking that he's going to surrender, and Rick just out of the blue just slashes his throat. And
that would have been nice.
and then he's kind of got him there, and he's like to the rest of the saviors is like, what you gonna do now? And most of them put their guns down, because the kingdom and everybody's all kind of teamed up, and they have kind of at least met their fighting forces equally if they didn't have them outnumbered at that point. But then he does the same thing. He lets him live because he just wants it to be an end to like the fighting between communities, and it really kind of is. I think in the book, as far as I know, the last time there's really a community feud. After that, it's just they find the Commonwealth. They find out that the governor is just stealing from people and all that stuff, and they expose her, overthrow her, take power in the Commonwealth, and then it's kind of all Monkey Dory. It's all Happy Dory, Monkey Dory. It's a Pokemon character. I've been playing a lot of cards lately. Sorry about that. But
well, while we're on Negan, are you familiar? Did you realize that Jeffrey Dean Morgan played Thomas Wayne in the Batman vs Superman, and
Maggie.
Lauren Cohen played Martha Wayne?
Yeah.
Wayne. Do you know about the Flashpoint comic series or comic book?
I've seen the DC animated.
Okay, so you're familiar with Flashpoint.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember when they were talking about doing Flashpoint, doing the Flash film, incorporating Flashpoint. A lot of people, including myself, were hoping that they would do the Thomas Wayne Batman, Martha Wayne Joker Flashpoint story.
Yeah.
Because those two, Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Batman and Lauren Cohen as Joker, a female Joker.
That would have been cool.
That would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
That would have been fantastic. But alas, wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
So aside from, because they're not going to really touch the other shows, which I'm not going to say I never watch them, but I really don't have any interest.
The Fear the Walking Dead was, it kind of started out a little, and it got better. And then they, I know we searched for his name. Is it Garrett Dillahunt? The guy that's like the deputy and
in Fear the Walking Dead?
No.
I don't know what context you're talking about, so I don't know how to look him up.
The Tommy Lee Jones movie with the guy that's killing everybody with the cattle thing.
Where are you going with this?
He plays the deputy in that.
Okay,
the only thing
in Fear the Walking Dead?
No, in that Coen Brothers movie that I'm not going to get the name of at this point because my brain is full of dumplings and I'll 3 hours from now I'm going to be like, ha. But Garrett Dillahunt, that guy, he was the Terminator in the No Country for Old Men.
Okay.
I
haven't seen that.
Oh my goodness. He's the deputy in that. He's the Terminator in that Sarah Connor Chronicles series.
Yeah.
He plays like this deputy that used to like have a hobby of being like a sideshow, like quick shooter, like quick draw guy, like doing Old West stuff. And he comes into the Fear the Walking Dead. I love that actor. Everything I've ever seen him in is just cool.
Garrett Dillahunt.
And he kind of kept me into Fear the Walking Dead to the point that when they killed him. And then after that, and after they did that, they did the same thing. Here's another bad person that we have to figure out what to do with, and it just became
See, I know him from Raising Hope.
The red-haired girl that's like the marketing girl from The Boys. She's supposed to be like the PR lady for the main guy. Mm-hmm.
I know who you're talking about, yes.
She becomes like this leader of the bad group in the Fear the Walking Dead thing, and she's just not believable as a bad person or somebody
intimidating.
Somebody that you could overthrow with like a stick.
Yeah.
Be like, oh, you're the bad guy, you're pal. Okay, now you're not anymore. It was one of those. They kind of got into one of those arcs, and then I kind of stopped watching it, and then I went back and watched the season because I'd seen something about the thing where they launched nukes from the sub, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. I want to go see that. But it was just, I don't know, the writing is just, all these things just got low quality, and again, it was just every time there's a bad guy that wanted everybody to return to nature, and every bad guy had like a different reason, but it was just another bad guy. And
Well, the only other Walking Dead media I've consumed is the Walking Dead Telltale video game series. Have you ever even heard of this?
no.
Okay. Similar to Maniac Mansion, it's like an adventure game.
Okay.
But the difference between the Telltale games and like the old LucasArts games is in the LucasArts games, you'd pick stuff up. Like you'd hypnotize a monkey to use him as a monkey wrench, that kind of thing. In the Telltale adventure games, you don't really have an inventory. You just kind of you mess with things and you do puzzles and you talk to people, and that's how you progress the story. And in the Telltale series, the main character Lee Everett is in the back of a cop car for some reason, and the cop car crashes because hey, zombie apocalypse. He escapes, and he comes across Clementine, who's lost her parents because of the zombie apocalypse. So you play this man who has this girl, and he has to take care of this girl. Easy setup.
Yeah.
And there's 3 seasons of it, and by the third season, at the end, spoiler I guess, by the end of the first season, Lee's gone, and then you're dealing with Clementine as a little girl in the second season, and then in the third season she's like a teen. So you kind of watch her grow up in this post-apocalyptic world. It's a great series, great little story. I think it's a great addition to the Walking Dead franchise. I don't know if it's based on anything. I think it's a completely new story.
Yeah. It's the best way to do it, honestly, instead of trying to translate some character.
I agree.
From it.
I agree, and I think it's worth. As someone who's a fan of The Walking Dead, I think it's worth a look at. Yeah. And I think that would be the kind of thing you could play with the family. Yeah. Hey, go over there, check this. Go over there, check that. And it's a slow burn too. There's not a lot of like action.
Do you play much board game stuff?
Like actual board games?
Yeah.
No, not really.
We got a Walking Dead Risk, basically. It is a Risk game where you have little territories in a prison and all this stuff. And
okay.
But the twist in it is that after everybody kind of takes a turn, like zombie outbreaks happen. And every time we've played it, I don't think we've ever played it to where we just all didn't get overrun.
Nice.
Like you try to either like sort of lie to I agree not to attack you if you don't attack me. Mm-hmm. It's like it doesn't matter because they'll like outbreak in the middle of your territory because it's random every time.
Okay.
And it's a pretty fun game.
Yeah.
But it's I think every time we've ever played it, probably the point of the game is to like if you could get a group of people to not attack each other and wipe out the zombies, maybe you'd still have to play Risk at some point. And that's the whole point of Risk is you're like at some point if you and I'm not going to attack you in Australia if you don't attack me in South America, then at some point I'm going to have to break the trust and like attack you.
Yeah. And I think there's 2 things I remember about Risk playing with the family growing up is 1, it takes forever. Yeah. That's the first thing.
Yeah, well, you've set it up on a table that you're not going to use because it
right,
takes like
for a couple days.
2 weeks.
And 2, you always feel like you kind of have a handle on it until you don't.
Yeah.
And I could see that overrunning aspect being a good addition to a Walking Dead type game.
Every time we've ever played, everybody like tries to like always come at me because I always win. Everybody's like attacking me from everywhere.
Get 'em.
And I'm just like, keep on attacking me because you're gonna leave yourself vulnerable, and then I'm gonna drive right through you. And it's like I just have to stay long enough to be able to cash in cards one time and get my like big flux of armies, and then because you guys have no strategy, one of us studied a lot of war history, so we're just waiting for you to make a mistake. But,
well, that's a little bit about The Walking Dead.
Yeah, I mean,
thanks for going through all that.
How else do you go through the show? I mean,
yeah,
try to cover all the content in the episodes. Yeah. You'd be here for weeks.
I'm sure. Well, they had The Talking Dead. They had that, and I guarantee there's someone out there who has a Walking Dead podcast, and it's all they talk about.
Yeah.
But I did really enjoy going back to it, and I appreciate that we went to talk about it because I don't think I would have done that.
You have a favorite
otherwise?
episode?
Favorite episode?
The only reason I asked that is because I do.
Yeah, but what's yours?
Mine is the one where, and I kind of like the character at times. They just never could make up their mind of what they wanted him to do in the show was with Morgan. But when Morgan goes off and finds, this is John Carroll Lynch, he's been a secondary actor in so many things. he was Mimi's husband in the Drew Carey show, and he was the sheriff's husband that was making the stamps in Fargo, the old Coen Brothers movie. But John Carroll Lynch is playing like this guy that lives out in the country and has like goats, and you find out that I can't remember what he was, if he's a teacher or something, that he built a cell for a guy that like had killed one of his kids or something, and basically I think had taken the guy out to imprison him and torture him at his little cabin. I think when the whole world went south, and Morgan meets him, and I've rewatched that episode a bunch of times. I should be able to remember more of it because it's been quite a while since I've done it. But get a chance to probably just Google search Morgan goat episode or something. Just that's a standalone episode. You can just go back and watch at any point in the series, and it's a really well written, well thought out episode. I've got that oh man, I don't know if it's down here. It's right over there. The Art of Peace.
Oh, okay.
That little book. I bought that because that's what he gives. What Morgan? I don't remember if he imprisons Morgan or just lets Morgan kind of stay there with him. Oh no, but yeah, no, he doesn't imprison him because he's the one that teaches Morgan how to stick fight. Morgan's doing all the stick stuff. Yeah. But when Morgan's just kind of on the brink of insanity from his son dying and all that stuff, this is the guy that kind of sets him back right and makes him to where he doesn't want to kill anymore and all that stuff. And I picked up that little book just because they had it there. I was like, I've got to find that and just read it. And it's a lot of like little philosophy and stuff about being peaceful. It's all right. I thought it was a little gem that's just stuck inside that whole long series. That's you can not watch the series at all, just watch that episode and be like, wow, that's pretty cool. But I don't know if anybody else really thinks of the show in terms of favorite episodes or not, but
I don't think so.
That's one that it's I know the only episode I've probably gone back and watched on purpose. But
I think of it in terms of arcs.
Yeah.
And I still the whole arc at the farm. I mean, I know that was really early on, but to me, I think that was a high point of the series, of the narrative.
Yeah.
That I think after that, they just kept trying to reach that.
Yeah, it might be that most people would rate it as maybe the most memorable episodes and not favorite, because some of those ones, like where Sophia comes out of the barn and things like that, are going to be the ones that really stick with you. But
that's kind of ironic when you think about like the big reveal about The Walking Dead is, oh, we are The Walking Dead, and in a way, the Walking Dead, the series, is kind of a zombie of its old self. Yeah. Where it
won't die.
it won't die, and they keep trying to claw to something better. They keep trying to get to that good narrative that they had in the beginning. Yeah. All right. Well, with that ends our main course.
I think it was
we're full of zombies. That was good.
All right.
We're gonna come back. We're gonna have our dessert. We're gonna watch some trailers, give some reactions. Trailers that we haven't seen. At least one of us haven't seen, I think.
Yes.
We both recommended some, and we'll see how that goes. But this is the end of part 2, the second course of episode 4. And we'll see you back for the third course, part 3.
We'll see you.